what do you think when you hear bats in your belfry? Somebody's a little crazy. Losing a few marbles. Maybe you think of bell towers. Maybe eccentric. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about bats today, but before I do, how many people have a challenge if a bat flew in the room right now and would be laying flat on the floor looking up going, get that bat out of here? So how many people are kind of freaky about bats? Don't be afraid to raise your hand. I heard you. Okay. It's very common to be afraid of bats, as it is spiders and snakes. And most of the time, media and writers especially, and TV have gotten us to the point of this hysteria around bats. And we'll talk more about that in a little while. And one of the things I want to talk to you about is the misconceptions of bats and why they're so good for us. They're absolutely fabulous to have around. Bats eat, well, before I even talk about bats, come on in. Has anybody ever driven through town and noticed when they stop at an intersection and they see all the birds at the intersection in the morning and especially in the evening, but particularly in the morning when it's cool? Has anybody not seen that? I would bet there's a correlation between a lot of tickets and not paying attention to things and not seeing these birds. But most of those birds are swallows. And swallows are capable of, they're all eating insects, and the intersection gets heated up by the cars at the intersection coming through, stopping at the light, and it heats up the intersection and it draws the insects. Swallows are capable of eating about 500 mosquitoes a day. It's pretty good, isn't it? And if that's Miller moths, how many people like Miller moths? How many people have a couple hundred in their house in a given week? I know it's certainly a good thing I have 2 cats. And if I'd have known they'd been this bad this year, I would have gotten 2 more cats, because they really clean them up. But they do knock over lamps and everything else as they're trying to get to them. So swallows are great things to have. They eat a lot of insects. Take a guess how many insects a bat eats. Anybody take a wild guess? Anybody ever heard this before? A couple thousand?
Yeah.
Bats will eat between, depending on the species, between 500 and 2,000 insects an hour.
Oh, wow.
1 hour. We have 17 species of bats in Colorado, and our most common bat here, and in most states in our area, the little brown bat and the big brown bat are the most common. Big brown bats will eat about 1,000 insects an hour. They've been documented to live for 31 years. If you do the math, that equates out to 45 million insects in their lifetime. One bat. You start to get the idea why we should like bats? I'll give you some more data to hopefully get you unfreaked out about bats. I have many customers of mine. Most of them are women because they're the ones that control the checkbook. And they have, I can't tell you how many customers, again, that were women, that were, when I mentioned bats, they're like, no way are you ever going to put a bat house up on this property. More than 90% of them have a bat house on their property once they find out all the benefits, and there's virtually no downside of having a bat house on your property. The largest colony of bats in Colorado is down at the Orient Mine. Anybody know where that's at? Anybody know where Salida is? It's nowhere near it. It's about 15 minutes south of Salida, driving. And it's off of 285. I can't tell you exactly. I know the road is GG to get there. They also, it'd be a fabulous place to take a vacation. Not for the bats necessarily. There's a cave down there, and they have about between 150 and 250,000 bats. And those are Brazilian free-tail bats. They also have hot springs there, and I guess they're some of the best hot springs in the state. And they have campgrounds there. It does cost to go there. So that started getting me thinking maybe I should take a vacation down there, sit in the hot springs all day, and then hike up and watch the bats come out for 10 minutes and go back to the hot springs. Of course, with a bottle of wine or 2, if they allow me. Take a guess what those bats eat. 1,700 pounds of insects a night. 1,700 pounds. No, the colony. That colony of bats, 1,700. The largest colony of bats in the world that we know of is down in a place called the Bracken Caves outside of San Antonio. About 15 minutes from downtown San Antonio. Has anybody ever been there? You been to the Bracken Caves? Did you watch the bats come out?
Oh, of course, yeah.
I guess that's the only reason why you go there.
Terrified of them, that's why.
That's the largest colony that we know of, and it's over 20 million Mexican free-tail bats.
Wow.
Take a guess how much they eat a night. Get wild here. Throw out some numbers. Anybody?
50 tons.
50 tons. 200 tons of insects a night.
Wow.
Every single night. Could you imagine how many insects we would have in the world if we didn't have bats? I mean, insects are something that Mother Nature really knows how to control if we don't get involved. Unfortunately, we get involved with too many things like pesticides and insecticides and all sorts of things that cause some issues. I'm going to show you, this is actually a bat house. And it's actually, I'm glad we didn't clap and yell too loud. Because if you'd reach in there, there's some bats in there. So if you would just...
No problem.
This is a nursery bat house. I make these. All my wood products I make myself. Right in Franktown, out of mostly wood from Colorado. So this is some kind of plywood, so this doesn't necessarily come from Colorado. This bat house, when in operation, this is a nursery bat house, sits like this. The bottom's usually about 10 feet off the ground. This is a landing pad on the bottom, and I purposely put it like this so you can see the partitions in there. And the reason why it's a nursery bat house is Mom wants to have a place where she can have babies or pups, and they can control their temperature. Bats are mammals. We prefer a particular temperature. 70 degrees year-round works pretty good for me. And I'm sure bats they would like that temperature too if they could find it. So the pups and Mom and Dad during the day, because they sleep during the day, will land on this landing pad and climb up and down and back and forth to control their temperature. The pups will be in here for about 5 to 6 weeks without being able to fly. So they have to control their temperature when they're in there and they can't get out. So that's the concept of a nursery bat. Well, that's a nursery bat house. So why a nursery bat house? Good question. If you want to attract bats, you want to attract female bats. The reason is wherever the females are, the males are going to be. Wherever bats or birds are born, they come right back to where they're born every single year, forever. Generation after generation after generation. The caves that these bats are in Colorado, and there used to be a lot more bats in Colorado before the miners, they've been coming here for hundreds of years, thousands of years. These bats have been coming back here. So it's pretty interesting to, in my opinion, to have one of these bat houses to attract bats. I have this exact bat house on the side of my garage, and there's about 100 big brown bats in it. And I have some cards and some information that I'm going to pass out here in a minute, if you wish. On my website, I actually have a live bat cam, and it's birdmanusa.com/batcam.html. And at about, what time is it? 8 or 7:25. In about an hour, almost exactly an hour, you can go onto that webcam and watch the bats all come flying out of here at about that time right at dusk. It's kind of cool. So bats, you're still not with us, are you, Elaine?
This is not on my grill list.
Yeah, well, bats are, so let me talk about some of the myths. Bats have rabies. Yes, they can have rabies. 99% of all the rabies cases in the world are from our dog is the host. A dog is the host. So a mosquito could transfer that to the dog, or it could get bit by something else, or the dog ate something to give it rabies. Bats will never, ever get in your hair. And let's talk about one more thing about rabies. You're 1,000 times more likely to get struck by lightning than to get bit by a bat. So my question to everybody always when I ask that, or when I say that, is how many people know anybody that's ever been struck by lightning? I mean, it happens, but it's very few. Or a dog bite. So 99% of the people that get it from a dog. So how many people do you know that got rabies from a dog bite? So it's very, very few. Bats use a thing called echolocation to know where everything is at. So where they know where, they can see us, they can know where a strand of your hair is. If you had an afro that stuck up in every direction, they would be able to sense every single strand of hair on your head and stay away from it. Because they would, it's 10,000 times more accurate and more complicated than our sonar system that we use, the most complicated sonar system we can come up with. I just find that to be pretty interesting. Let's see. And I think, oh, so another reason for bats. How many people like tequila? Come on. Raise your hands. I didn't see your hand go up, Elaine. Sometimes margaritas, I call tequila it's the happy buzz. See whiskey drinkers? Don't hang around them. They're gonna want to fight you before the bottle's gone. Tequila, no, they just want to laugh and have fun. Guess what? No bats, no tequila. Agave is where tequila comes from. Bats are 100% responsible for pollinating agave plants. Anybody like bananas? Guess what? Bats are 100% responsible for pollinating bananas. Figs, cashews. Anybody ever 100% responsible? That's what pollinates those plants. If a bat was in here right now, that moth would be toast. So anything that flies at night, a bat's going to eat. Any kind of insect, doesn't matter what it is. So bees and flies, like horse flies, probably not going to be eaten by bats because usually don't fly at night. Does anybody ever eat breadfruits? Anybody and travel down in Southeast Asia or in the Pacific? There's breadfruit trees all over the place there. 100% responsible for those being pollinated also. So the next time you go to the store and you buy some bananas, or the next time you have a margarita at a bar, you can thank a bat. Thank you.